a lot of affiliates are scared of coding. I know this because, I write articles, and there's an article series on STM about basic coding for affiliates. And a lot of people say, no, I'm not going to touch that because I'm not a tech head. I'm not, people have this perception that you either can code or you can't. But if you've done the things you're talking about, if you've managed to get through the first affiliate campaign where you've got a token going here and a traffic source here and funnel flux or volume or whatever, and your affiliate network, and you're passing your post back through your parameters and everything goes horribly wrong and you don't know what the hell's going on. If you've managed to get through that experience, you have a brain that can cope with coding. In fact, that's, when I started doing this, again, I'd been coding for 25 years at that point, and I still found it a brain melter. So it's actually probably harder to learn to do the kind of tracking and ripping and cleaning that affiliates do than it is to learn basic coding. Basic coding these days with things like Python is super, super easy, and it's really logical, which, let's be honest, affiliate tracking is not always.
Not always, no. Hello and welcome to The Robust Marketer. Today we have a friend of mine, Hugh Hancock, also known as Carmen, from the STM forum, where he is the guardian of the guides. He is one of my favorite people I've met in the industry. I've known him for several years now, and he's a real character. He's an expert affiliate marketer. He's one of the few people I know who uses affiliate marketing to fuel his very expensive tastes for filmmaking and video game making and all sorts of other creative pursuits. We were super happy to work with him on the recent acceleration module, where he produced an amazing acceleration module on automation, affiliate automation for our students. And we're here today to talk with him a little bit about himself and a little bit about this module. Welcome to the podcast today, Hugh. How you doing?
Thank you very much. Doing very well, thank you.
Very
yes,
nice.
It's always entertaining to think about the various ways affiliates have used their expensive tastes. Other people have Lamborghinis. I have a very silly-looking Lycra suit that costs me slightly more than most Lambos.
With some ping pong balls on it, I've seen.
It's some ping pong ball-like things. Yes, this is a motion capture suit that I was able to start using for filmmaking precisely because of affiliate marketing. And it's the same one that they use on the Avengers movies. So, it's great. It's amazing what you can do with this stuff.
Well, next podcast, we'll have you in that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, definitely. That's fine. It doesn't look silly at this angle. It's only if you see me the full thing,
Yeah. So let's give a little bit more background on you for here, because you've been sort of an ever-present force on the STM forum. Most of our listeners will know the STM forum. It's the premier place for affiliate marketers to share tactics. Now, are you the most thanked person on there, or you've got to be right near the top with everything you've done?
Most thanked by, I think, getting on for a third over the next most. Yes. Oh, I have written a lot of stuff over the years.
Nice. What are some of the ones you're most proud of that you feel have had the most impact on the community?
I think the cookbooks are the really big ones. The cookbooks and the Getting Started Guide. I mean, the Getting Started Guide was, to the best of my knowledge, the first really comprehensive overview of the methodology of affiliate marketing from the perspective of trying to do this properly. Because back when I started doing this stuff, which was 2011 at this point.
Okay.
This was that's when I went full time. That was when I started doing paid affiliate marketing seriously. In terms of being an affiliate, I have technically been an affiliate since about '96 when Amazon started their associates program. But yes, I started really focusing on paid traffic in 2011. And back at that point, most people who were having success, partially because the traffic was cheaper and easier to use, there was a lot of people were using kind of rules of thumb, and there was a lot of feel going on. And I tend to compare it to kind of the two schools of poker, where you have the feel players and you have the math players. And I'm very much a math player. And so the Getting Started Guide was the first, to the best of my knowledge, the first affiliate marketing guide that incorporated like Bayesian statistics so that you could actually know when your ads were working as opposed to just sort of feeling it out, and best practice on copywriting, all this kind of thing. It's a completely comprehensive guide, and I know that probably at this point hundreds of people have gone from nothing to sort of 4 figures a day using that and using the cookbooks, which I talked about. So that's an incredible feeling. There's been a fair few times at Affiliate World conferences where I remember one time I was at last AWA. I was up on the roof bar, and I was exhausted because I'd been master of ceremonies for the entire day.
On stage the whole day, as you usually are at
yes.
these events. Yeah, I know a little bit about that.
grilling the Facebook people from Facebook.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of come up there for a quiet beer, and this guy comes and stops me. And I'm like, I've got to put my face on, and and then he says, I know you're tired, mate. I just wanted to thank you. I used to be, I used to be really struggling, and then I came to STM and I read the cookbook and I read the Getting Started guide, and now, I'm completely location independent. I'm here with my girlfriend. We're here in Thailand, and we couldn't have possibly done this without you. And that's, nice. That's an amazing feeling. That's better than all the money in the world. Just
better than a beer.
Yeah, significantly better than the beer.
Nice, but beer good with a beer, I imagine, at the same time. So
it was lovely.
Nice. Well,
so that I think is the stuff I'm most proud of, is just the fact that people come up to me and they say I've changed their lives.
Yeah, that's not a bad feeling. And that's the best thing about what I'm doing right now, is finding all these amazing people who've done some great things, who also are so interested in sharing and helping the rising tide raise for whatever reason. Sometimes they want to build their own teaching aspect, and a lot of times they just do it because they love sharing. They really like helping people, and they love the feeling it gives them to give back to the community.
I think that's one of the nicest things about this community, is the extent to which a lot of people have this abundance and they're not selfish with it. It's not a lot of other industries. People are very, partially because there's less to go around, people are very grasping. They're very kind of really trying to hold on to stuff. The film industry can be pretty nasty sometimes, and that's where I spent a lot of time.
Nice.
And the affiliate marketing industry, it's really, really nice to have that change where people are so willing to help.
Cool. Okay, well, let's dive right into it. I know when we originally asked you to create an acceleration module for the course on affiliate automation, I think we had said somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 3 hours kind of thing. So we know that you tend to run long after watching your acceleration module. And I know that you have a bit of a timeline. So I wanted to just jump right into to this automation course. So automation is such an interesting thing for me with affiliates, because so many affiliates get into affiliate marketing because they don't, it's a low barrier to entry, where you don't really have to learn how to code. You just have to learn how a few links work, and you have to learn how tokens are passed between trackers. And there's some basic stuff you have to learn, but you don't have to dive into the deep blue sea of coding. So with API, it's sort of like API automation is sort of like a middle ground, it seems like, where you, with some basic coding, you can really accelerate your efforts that you've done throughout the years in order to, you've always said you don't need coding, but with just a little bit, you can really help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think these days the thing with coding is it's not what it used to be 20 years ago. And I've been coding for 30 something years at this point. And yeah, it used to be really hard. If you wanted to do anything serious, you were coding in assembler, and that's just brain melting, or raw C, and you're having to try and remember what the hell a pointer is and why it works, which I never really mastered. But nowadays you've got tools like Python, and as affiliates, we have already. A lot of affiliates are scared of coding. I know this because I write articles, and there's an article series on STM about basic coding for affiliates. And a lot of people say, no, I'm not going to touch that because I'm not a tech head. I'm not, people have this perception that you either can code or you can't. But if you've done the things you're talking about, if you've managed to get through the first affiliate campaign where you've got a token going here and a traffic source here and funnel flux or volume or whatever, and your affiliate network, and you're passing your post back through your parameters, and everything goes horribly wrong and you don't know what the hell's going on. If you've managed to get through that experience, you have a brain that can cope with coding. In fact, that's, when I started doing this, again, I'd been coding for 25 years at that point, and I still found it a brain melter. So it's actually probably harder to learn to do the kind of tracking and ripping and cleaning that affiliates do than it is to learn basic coding. Basic coding these days with things like Python is super, super easy, and it's really logical, which, let's be honest, affiliate tracking is not always.
Not always, no. So talk a little bit about the opportunity. Like how are all these products, all these ad vendors, essentially, the pop networks, the redirects, the mobile display companies, how have they been now built in a way that allows for what we call API access? And what is an API?
Well, technically an API is an application programming interface, which makes it sound about as friendly as an angry Rottweiler. Basically, the way I like to think of it is, because, I'm kind of old, I remember the old text adventure games, where you would type in, go north, kill orc, eat food, this kind of thing. And I've been gaming all the way since then, so I've also, played all the modern games, Skyrim and Witcher 3 and all this stuff, where you're controlling it with a trackpad. And An API is basically just a text adventure way to control your advertising account. So you're used to the graphical way. You're used to the Xbox approach, where you have a bunch of boxes on the web and you click them with a mouse. And all the API is a way to send a bunch of words to the same program at the back end, and it will control the thing for you. And that's very powerful because it's much, much easier to get another computer to send words than it is to get another computer to actually control the mouse and click around and all these complicated things. So it allows you, by using this simplified vocabulary, to teach another program to control your account for you. And that means you can do all the kinds of things that you couldn't possibly do without automation, like, to give you just one example, rather than checking your campaigns once a day. So, we as normal human affiliates, we check our campaigns once a day, we adjust our bids. Or with automation, you can check them once every minute. And that's a pretty big advantage.
And take an action when you
exactly.
something.
So check campaign, go, all right, we're not in position 2 anymore for that placement that we want to be in position 2 for, up the bid.
Yeah. Or if you want to spin up 1,000 campaigns, you don't have to click the button 18,000 times or however many times it takes to set it up through the graphical user interface. You can just say, spin up 1,000 campaigns with these parameters, and it's done in a few minutes.
And that can be incredibly powerful. I remember one guy back in the Plenty of Fish days who was doing these tiny micro-targeted campaigns where his dating ads would be like, are you looking for a red-headed 45-year-old smoker in East Michigan who likes dogs?
Who is it?
And then he'd have another one which was 45-year-old red-headed ex-smoker in East Michigan who likes cats, budgies, and so forth. And that gave you, because those were so targeted, and anyone who saw them, which was like 4 people, felt like they were speaking to them because they basically were. Nobody else could compete with that. So he was running ridiculously low costs, getting ridiculously high conversion rates, and without automation, you just do that.
So do you think a lot of the big, so let's start with the why a little bit. Why automate? We're answering the question a little bit now, but do you think that a lot of the big affiliates on, pops and natives and display, do you think a lot of the big affiliates these days are leveraging these? Do you feel you're at a disadvantage a little bit in the marketplace if you don't automate?
Not at a smaller level. If you're at the kind of three figures a day level, then automation will certainly help you, but you are not automatically competing with people who are using automation. If you get into 4 or 5 figure a day mark, then absolutely, if you're at 5 figures a day, your competition is hiring data scientists. They are developing automated tools. They are using machine learning. They are doing all these kinds of things, and you absolutely cannot compete. In fact, you probably can't get to that level without having some kind of either automation or some other unfair advantage. You can always find another way to do things, but automation is a very, very powerful way to get an unfair advantage over your competition.
Well, then that sounds like a very good reason to maybe take the crash course that you provided for ISAC training here. So let's talk a little bit about that actual unit that you created for us. I've been watching it a few times now. One of the things you're going to get with this, with Hugh's unit as a filmmaker is pretty high production value. You're going to get some of his uncanny sense of humor. There's going to get some sci-fi influence in there. It was a real joy to watch. But what were you thinking when we asked you to make this acceleration module? What was your thought process, and how did you structure what you created for us?
Well, aside from thinking, this is an opportunity for that spooky Sith robe that I haven't used for ages, I think the big thing I wanted to do was to make automation accessible, and both to people who can already code and people who can't code. So for people who can code, I've actually demystified a couple of things that a lot of coders would find pretty terrifying. Like, for example, figuring out how to use an undocumented API that maybe the people who are operating the site don't necessarily want you to figure out. We actually do that live. And personally, a couple of years ago, if I'd seen something like that, I would have been like, that's really useful because I don't know how to do that. Or control algorithms for auto bidders, which is something I've been asked about quite a lot. There's a huge body of knowledge about control algorithms, which are used for things like drones. So if you've got an algorithm that can handle keeping 4 different rotors in the air against wind and all the rest of it, you can handle running an auto bidder. But this is all stuff that coders will find very useful. And for non-coders, the big thing that I've tried to do is to give you a step-by-step route into automation in as unscary a way as humanly possible. So there's sections in there on hiring developers, because you don't have to do this stuff yourself, although I do think basically everyone should learn to code. There's a big section in there on hiring developers, big section on speccing projects, which is something that people get very confused by, because one of the big things that tends to happen the first time you try and automate something is you attempt to automate the entire world. And, the next thing you know, you're trying to build something with about the code base about the size of Microsoft Windows, and that doesn't go very well. So they're breaking things down into simple tasks. I've also done a section on automating without coding, because you can do that. And also a big section on introducing you to exactly the tools that I use, which will probably, we could look at those in a minute and a bit of the actual code. It's way simpler than people think it would be these days. The thing is that there's always this perception of how complex coding is, which is it's about 10 years out of date, is all it is. People have seen code, people know roughly how it works and what it does, but they don't know that coders are lazy and like things to be really easy. And we've had a good couple of decades of being very well funded to make it really easy at this point. So it's a lot more accessible.
And have a certain open mindset, similar to what we talked about with affiliates, where they're going to put their work out there on places like GitHub. And if you know how to look for it, if you can understand the basic architecture of why you're trying to do certain things, and a little bit about the language, about how to write language that these computers understand, I guess that would make it a lot easier to search for things as well and find ready-made stuff.
Yeah, I think this is one of the big secrets that people don't realize about automation these days. You don't need to do most of the work yourself. It's a bit like Stack That Money, where we have expert affiliates telling you how to run affiliate campaigns and giving you the benefit of their wisdom. And if you didn't have that, I've seen people try to start affiliate campaigns, only using the Warrior Forum or something, and it's a good way to waste $50,000. And in the same way, even more so, coders these days, there's a really big ethos of if you've solved a difficult problem, you share it with other people so they don't have to solve it. Again, it comes down to laziness.
Yeah, and so that they could solve a problem in the future that you won't have to solve.
Exactly. There was this whole thing of why the hell would two people in two different places solve the same problem twice? And so as an affiliate looking to do automation, a lot of the time you can just Google, I want to use an API to grab data, and page after page after page after page of recipes and samples and libraries and all this kind of thing will pop up. And then you basically just plug it in. I mean, it actually gets to the point, and this is something I mentioned in the course, every so often on elite coder forums, places like Hacker News, which is basically Stack That Money for people who are running .coms. It's the place where Dropbox first mentioned they were launching, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Every so often you get someone there going, I'm having an identity crisis. Am I actually a programmer at all, or am I just very good at Googling? And the thing is, as affiliates, we have a perfect fit for this, because if you have managed to become an affiliate without mastering the art of the search tool, you're doing better than me. So we're already very good at finding obscure information, and that's 90% of what you need to automate these days.
That's very interesting. So let's throw out a few dog whistles here for people. Like, what are the things in let's focus on because this is what you built in your course on redirects, on pops and mobile display. What are some things that people might want to look at automating?
There's tons. I mean, there are absolutely tons. Just off the top of my head, if you're doing anything banner related, automating a banner creation is a no-brainer. Anytime you're interacting with any kind of tedious interface where you're having to do the same thing over and over again, you can automate that. You can automate campaign creation on almost any platform. You can automate reporting. That's a really big one. Imagine rather than having to go into Volume and detailedly click through each campaign and check, you just get it all in a nice spreadsheet every morning. You can do that. You can do things that mean it's impossible to compete with you, like the auto bidder I mentioned. Auto bidders, when I was interviewing a bunch of other affiliates about what they'd started automating with, some of the biggest guys in the industry now started with auto bidders because it's incredibly hard to compete. If you're competing for a placement and you are doing it manually and the other guy's got a robot doing it, you can't compete with that. And so if you have a robot bidding on your placements, you suddenly can just outcompete anyone doing it manually immediately, because they have to check, they have to do other things with their day. And your robot can cheerfully just sit there going, oh, I see he's upped his bid. We'll just up a bid a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, Pete, Auto blockers is another huge one. Again, this is something where we have other shit to do. Computers don't. So if you're running a POPs campaign across like a 5,000, 10,000 placements, you will check in twice a day and you'll go, okay, this placement here is crap. But by that point, it may well have spent more than it needed to do to achieve statistical significance. And that anytime you are buying traffic beyond statistical significance, you are wasting cash. It's as simple as that. You are getting literally no benefit out of it. So if you have a robot that is automatically checking that every minute, you can save hundreds and thousands of dollars just by doing that. And it gets even more powerful if you're doing something like a bot test where you need a very small amount of traffic. Doing a bot test manually is a pain in the backside because you have to sit there refreshing so that you don't end up spending $20 on one placement where you needed to spend 50 cents.
This is a bot detector, like trying to detect bad traffic.
Bot detector, yeah. If I'm looking at a pop source and heaven forbid, I might suspect there might be a bit of bot traffic on there. I know it's crazy, but let's just consider it as a hypothetical. Then I will run a simple tester to figure out which ones are the obvious bots, and that will go by quite quickly, and you can easily spend a lot more money than you need to. But if you've got an automated system looking at that and instantly pausing anything that might have a bot, that might be largely bot traffic, then A, you spend a lot less money, and B, you can get on with your day.
This to me seems like an unbelievably good application for it, because I just know that coming from my background in mobile display and some other places, I just know that there's a lot of inventory out there that it doesn't take a lot to make a big impact. Like if you can figure out, like, there are a lot of dumb bots. There's a lot of smart fraud out there as well, but you can cut out a large percentage of the fraud just by putting basic stuff to trim away the obvious bots.
Yeah. I don't know what you would say on this, but I would say from my experience, it's about 70%. 70% of the traffic is dumb bots. The rest get increasingly clever.
Yeah, within the percentage that is fraud.
Yeah, within the percentage that is fraud. Yes, yeah.
And I've heard that number vary from 20 to 40%, or of the traffic there, depending on what the network is doing on their side. And quite often they're not doing something there. Quite often they're just taking the traffic from their partners. It's like this. It's like the whole buffet is open on the publishers spinning up these fake sites and fake traffic. And so if you can put some things just to auto block obvious bot traffic, that seems like a no-brainer, something people should be really looking into.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. You can also do a lot of research here. I mean, one of the things we go through in the module is taking Afflo, which is an aggregator of offers that a lot of people may be using. And it provides data on what offers are currently converting, which you can see as a live stream, but it's not particularly user-friendly to use. And again, as a human, you would have to stare at that all day to get any useful information. But you can easily pull a continuous stream of information like that, and there are hundreds of these on the web, but all kinds of things. You can pull that really easily using automation into a database that you can then query very quickly. And when I do this on the course, you'll see me live actually find a trend that has bubbled up in the last couple of hours, which is the kind of thing that you're never going to see if you don't have the ability to automate that data collection and collation. And that's really, really powerful. I know of a fair number of affiliates who are using tools like this to run automated, basically trend catchers, where they watch Afflo, and as a new hot trend pops up, they spin up automatically a campaign on ZeroPark or something to capture the traffic from that. And then as the trend dies down, they can see that and they kill the campaigns before they spend too much money. And, if you've got 20 or 30 of these things bobbing up a day, that's a goodly chunk of income, which you are just not going to capture without code.
It's incredible. Now, so back to what you said a little bit earlier about you can hire developers to do this kind of stuff, but really, what we're going to do now, I think, is because I'm a real layman. I am someone who would say I can't code, I can't do it. We're gonna go through one of your scripts and just talk about what you're telling the machine and how you go about doing it, so we can, I think of, like, by now I don't know how to write an API script and I'm afraid to ask or something. But you're gonna show us. But it behooves you as a marketer, even if you are planning on hiring developers, the more you can understand, because your developer isn't going to have the crafty affiliate mind that you have necessarily, right? So the more you can understand, if you can understand the foundation of what's possible, even if you plan on hiring a developer, it really is important for you to get the understanding so that you can impart that to your developer and find those crafty uses.
In all seriousness, one thing that I would basically say anyone who is an affiliate should learn to code a bit. You don't have to become Bill Gates, but you there is no excuse in 2017 for not learning to code. If you can master HTML and CSS and you can sort of hack through a landing page looking for dodgy scripts, you can code Python. It's as simple as that. And it will give you a new perspective on the world, which you can then turn into profit, because what you have and a lot of programmers do not have is an entrepreneurial mindset and an ability to find profit. And if you combine that with a knowledge of what programming can and can't do, you'll save yourself an enormous amount of grief and expenditure trying to tell programmers to do something that's really hard, and find a whole load of simple ways to make a lot more money.
Nice. Okay, well, let's spin up a Python document here, a .py, I believe.
That is it. Yep.
Is it? It's just a text file?
It is just a text file. Yes. So this is actually the most complicated one. Let me go to a nice simple one. Okay, so this is the entirety of the Airflow lead finder that I was talking about. What this does is this checks live what leads are going through Airflow system and drops them into a database, which you could then query either, you could use a GUI. There are loads of database GUIs out there. You could throw it into a machine learning tool. You could easily write up something to display it as graphs on a web page. That would be like a few lines of code. And all of that is done through this here, which is less than a page of text. It's 37 lines. And it would be an awful lot less than that if it wasn't the fact that I was, actually trying to add some comments occasionally and put in spacing. So, shall I talk you through this?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first thing that's really interesting up here, we were talking about solved problems and how programmers don't like resolving problems. And these first 3 lines, all they are doing is saying, import this problem that someone else has solved. So, as I say, we're putting this into a database. Databases are pretty complicated. I'm using a database here called SQLite, which is the simplest one out there and is also incredibly robust and really, really good. But if I had to actually interface with that directly, it'd be a couple of dozen lines of code. I used to do this back in the bad old days, and it was very annoying. And that is the kind of, spaghetti code that does get difficult and complicated. But this line here is all I need to do. There is a library, which is basically some pre-baked code that someone else has written called Peewee, actually. It's this line that is the database, called Peewee. That does all the database interaction for me, presents it in a reasonably friendly way, and so I just say import all of that stuff. Star means just like it does on Windows, load star.star, just a wildcard for import everything. So I'm just saying import absolutely everything from this library because we're going to be using it later. And that immediately halves the size of what this would be and makes it a lot more easy to write and readable. I mean, I coded this in an hour, and I know from past experience that writing something to interact with a database will take at least that long. So that's a huge time saver.
Cool.
Likewise, this requests line here, you'll see in almost everything I write, requests is a library that deals with APIs. That's specifically what it does. And it transforms quite an annoying task of persuading Python to talk to something on the web in the way that it likes into 1 or 2 lines. So that's the basics. Then we just get into defining a couple of things that we're going to need to use. The main one being the database. So we create the database here, and this just creates a file called that, which is a database. This here tells my software, and this looks complicated. I will honestly tell you, I Googled this. And this is basically copy paste, change the names. So all it does is it tells this program, okay, we're going to be importing a load of data. Here is the data we're going to be importing. And if you look at these individual things, you'll see they look very familiar because they are basically the columns on Volume. Mm-hmm. Here is, the amount the lead gave us, the browser that the lead came from, the country, the ID, the time. This is all stuff that we're, if you're an affiliate, you're already used to chucking all this stuff into a URL that you're going to send to your tracker or your postback or all the rest of it. And all these things over here are just telling you what type of array it is. So there's a little bit of vocabulary you need to know, but text field is pretty obvious. Integer field, if you know any maths, integer is a whole number. Mm-hmm. Float is, that's a computery term. Float just means a decimal, basically. It's a number that is not a whole number. That's all it is. And that's it. That's the entire thing. Once we've got this here, that just tells Peewee, which is the database library, okay, here is what our database is going to look like.
Nice.
So all of
I'm with you.
so you're with me so far?
I'm with you.
Excellent. Okay. So what we do then is we say, right, we want to go to this page here because that's where Aflo shares the API data. And as I mentioned, we figured out that in the module, I actually go into the web page and figure out how that works. But for a lot of things, things like Zero Park, for example, or Bloom, or Funnel Flux, the API is actually just written up somewhere, so you can just go and Google it. You know, what URL do I need to go to get the leads? And then that's just stored here. So we store it as a variable, which is basically any information in a program. So you store it as that because it saves having to write this out every time you want to use it. It's just a shortcut, and it also makes it easier to read. Payload here, that's just the instructions we're going to give it, which is okay. All we want to know say is we want a limit of 2,000 on these leads. So I want to get 2,000 of these a time. And then here we are, this is a password, essentially. API tokens, every API uses a thing called a token to let you get access, unless it's just publicly open. So this is another one of those vocabulary things where when you see token, you think password. It's as simple as that. I suspect there is a historical reason why it's called a token rather than a password. You may know the answer to this one. I don't actually know why it's called a token. I just know that I look for token and go, okay, that's a password.
Well, it's generated from the vendor, right? This is an instance where you have to talk to your rep at Aflo and be like, hey, I'd like an API token, and it's auto-generated for you specifically, so they can trace what you've done, I assume, back to you.
Yeah, exactly, and that's. Yeah, it is a password, I guess, generated on the other side rather than one that you set. Why that is, and I think this is one of the important things. People assume that someone who is a proficient coder will be like, oh, yes, well, I know exactly what that is, blah, 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 blah. There are certainly people who do know that, but a lot of coders, we're just going, well, worked this way last time. We Googled it and it said token, and they said to put the token in, so we put the token in, and then it worked.
Yep.
And this is more or less what's going on here. So I've got my token. I get my token from Aflo. And then all I do is use this library to just say, right, get me the information. It's pretty obvious. And this is one of the nice things about Python specifically. Python is designed to be comparatively readable. You can look through it and you can at least get a vague sense of what's going on, even if you don't know the language. And as soon as you do know a bit of the language, it all makes a lot of sense. We're going to use the requests library, which we know we got to talk to our API. We're going to get something from the API. We're going to go to the URL here. We're going to send it the instructions here. We're going to send it the password here. And we store the result as a variable called R. And that just stores that in the computer memory. Then we know now, okay, so this is another one of those examples of hard problem made simple. There are several standard formats that computers use to interchange information, like HTML and like CSS. And the one that you'll probably have not heard of if you're not a programmer is JSON, which stands for JavaScript Serialized Object something or other. And it's a format that is very, very easy to get a computer to spit out. It's a pain in the arse to read if you're a human. I've, for various reasons, spent a lot of time reading JSON recently, and I wish I hadn't. But because, again, programmers are lazy, actually decoding that by hand, writing the tools for that is long and annoying. But Python has a simple method. So all you do is you just say, this is a JSON object. I don't want to deal with JSON because I'm lazy. So please make it useful. And it does, okay, and puts it in here in a way that we can interact with really, really easily. So that's just the thing that if your API sends JSON, which most APIs do, this is how we deal with it. And then we just go into a for loop. Now, if you've done any programming at all, you'll have probably heard of for loops, but they're normally pretty weird and wonderful. It's for I equals blah, colon, I, exclamation mark, whatever. In Python, for line in JSON text. Well, that's easy enough to understand. For every line in this text, and that I already know that a line equals a lead, basically, I start by printing out the ID of the lead, which is just the same as it would be in Volume. You've got a unique ID for each lead. It'd be a click ID in Volume. And I'm just doing that so that when I run this thing, I have some feedback to say, okay, now I'm dealing with this lead. And That's completely optional, but otherwise you just get a cursor blinking away silently and it gets a bit eerie and you don't know if it's crashed. So I always put it in there. Another thing that people often get confused by, a lot of people, when they are starting to learn programming, they'll do something like Code Academy, and they'll get to, a difficult lesson in it, and they'll be like, I can't get this to work. I've tried it a couple of times and it's failed every time. I'm clearly not a programmer. If you were a programmer, if you knew 10 other languages and you had worked at Google and you were doing that Code Academy lesson, you might well be sitting there. Very good chance you are sitting there at the same time going, I've got no idea. It just doesn't seem to work. We spend a lot of time breaking stuff and fixing it. And the big difference, much like the big difference between a new affiliate and a successful affiliate, the big difference between a new programmer and someone who's done it before is that we know that we just have to keep sitting there and bashing our heads off it. And eventually
or asking for help, or
asking for help, absolutely, which is something that both affiliates and programmers should do more often. And I think at one point in one of my modules for the automation, I think I spent like 2 or 3 minutes sitting there staring at a really obvious bug, trying to figure it out. And I left that in deliberately to show that this is what real programmers do.
Yeah.
We don't just... There is a tendency as in programming demos to try and make it all very manicured and very, I'm very smart and I know all this stuff, so I don't have to worry. And I deliberately didn't want to do that. So in the automation module, you see how I actually code, not, the pretend version.
Not the polished,
Yeah, exactly. So then, this is all pretty simple. Apart from the except, it's another one of those vocabulary things. Except just means it has thrown an exception, which is computer speak for it has all gone tits up. It has all gone pear-shaped. Something's gone wrong. We don't know why. That's what an exception means. It means that it has thrown an exception to the anticipated result. Now, the thing with this is that what we're doing is we're trying something. So you can see that obviously enough. We're going to try and get the lead from the database. This is the database here. Created our class lead here. So we're going to try and get a lead from the database with the same ID as the line we're currently checking. The reason we're trying this is to make sure we don't duplicate the lead IDs, because it's possible if you're running this thing every 2 or 3 minutes, Airflow's API doesn't know which leads it has sent you because they just didn't code that in. So you have to check and make sure that you don't duplicate, because otherwise you can get very excited and go, Kazakhstan's blowing up, there's 500 leads, and of course that 500 leads was actually one lead that you got 500 times.
Yeah.
This is a fairly common way to screw this sort of thing up. So what we're doing here is we're actually trying to get this, and if it doesn't work, exception, throws an exception, we go, that's great, that's fantastic, that means we know the lead is not in there. As you can see, the else, so if there is not an exception, then we just go print duplicate ID. We go, okay, we've seen this ID before, so we're not going to put it into the database. But otherwise, we go, except, okay, we know that there is no lead ID because this has failed. So all we do then is we create a new line in the database. So lead is the database, which we've already defined up here.
Yeah.
Create, fairly self-explanatory. And then it's just like a postback. It's just amount equals amount, browser equals browser, country equals country, all the stuff that you're already used to doing in an affiliates campaign. And this is literally all you need. This entire thing that we've just gone through there, that is a complete aggregator for Airflow leads. You can use that to spot trends, to take advantage of information that other people don't have.
So this would create a table which you would essentially create a pivot table out of.
This will create a table on a database that you could do anything you like with.
Yeah.
I mean, what I was doing with it in the module was just going in there, and there is a nice graphical interface for SQLite databases. And if you know a tiny little bit of SQL, which I think a lot of people will have picked up just over the course of messing with trackers, you can just go select leads from so-and-so ordered by count, and then you can see, okay, in the last 6 hours, the most leads have been coming from Brazil in the vertical of mobile content. And that was actually, I think, something I found live. Alternatively, you could write another program which would actually be shorter than this using Flask, which is one of the tools I recommend in the course. And that would just fire up a nice table for you whenever you reloaded it, saying, okay, in the last 6 hours, here is all this. And that would look like any other tool that you might pay $100 for. It's just most of these things are just a database feeding into a big table.
Yeah, very interesting. And so you take this script, this is more noob questions here, but you take this script and you spin it up on a server, you load it up on a server, and you just make sure that everything's talking to the right parties, and you're off to the races. So
yeah, well, I mean, this stuff will talk to the, now that we've fixed it up, this will talk to the right party automatically. But yeah, basically all you would do is on any computer, on your local computer or on a server that you've rented, you would just run this thing. It's Python and then the name of the script, and that will run it and spit out the results into the database. And if you wanted to do this frequently, what you would do is you would schedule it either using Windows Scheduler or whatever Mac people use. I have no idea, but I'm assuming there's something. Or cron on Linux, all of which are like one-liners, and just say run this thing every 5 minutes, and that's it.
Nice. And now super lazy affiliates can just take the scripts that you created in this course once they take the course, and they can literally just plug and play. They should be able to use what you're providing in the course and change some things up and run it even with, and that's, I feel like, a really good way for them to sort of if they can just get these things working, it's like then they can go back and parse a little bit about why it works.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, at least the Afflow aggregator and the auto blocker script you can literally just run those as is on the traffic sources or the companies that they are for, and they will give you business useful functions or data straight off the bat. The only thing you would need to change is you need to get your own API token, because you can't use mine. Don't want you controlling my campaigns. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah.
But other than that, the auto bidder here, which is, like I said, it's a full-fledged auto bidder, that will run on a zero park campaign and sit you in position 3. If you wanted to change the position you wanted to be sat on, then you just change the number. That's it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Nice. I know you have a hard stop in a few minutes here, so anyone wants to get a hold of these amazing courses that Hugh's created, it's obviously at istacktraining.com/acceleration. We're working on a lot of exciting things with Hugh. As a lot of you know, we just put on a really great live Facebook event, and we're currently working on a Facebook course. We're going to be working, I believe, with Hugh on some really interesting automation stuff with Facebook as well, which I imagine has a lot of great, powerful uses.
Oh yes, the thing that I have really come to understand about Facebook, I've been using Facebook a lot the past few months, is basically Facebook at the end of the day is built by nerds for nerds. It is kind of built with the expectation that you will automate it, and the interface is there because the engineers at some point figured out that not everyone programs, but the power that you can get from automating is huge.
That's incredible, because the power you can get through the user interface is so ridiculously big.
Pretty considerable, yes.
Yeah, you really shudder to think about all the tricky things you can do with the API with Facebook, so that's really cool. Nice. Okay, well, Hugh, I know you got to run, so thanks so much for taking the time today. And
no problem.
If people want to get in touch with you, what do you recommend? An STM forum, probably the best way?
STM forum is absolutely the best way. I do occasionally get a little bit bombed on my private messages, but I'm trying very, very hard to keep up to date with them these days. So if you want to get in touch with me, just PM Carmen. That's CAURMEN. Increasingly these days changing into Cowman. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Just PM Carmen, and I will get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Hugh, and I look forward to being in a fun city with you again soon.
Yes, absolutely. More beers.
We'll see you in Bangkok.
Sure.
Okay, bye.
Catch you later.